So now we will go on to Olena from Ukraine, and she will be here as a discussion participant. Olena, I will hand it over to you.
Today, I would like to say several updates about Ukrainian situation, about women's rights in general, and of course, I'll talk about gender ideology as well. We can highlight four main topics, which are, I would think, the most interesting for all of us in relation to Ukraine now, because we have conflict-related sexual violence, we have great changes on harassment situation, we have something to learn from on pornography issue, and of course gender ideology. So why I would choose these topics? As you all know, in any crisis situation, as the war is and national like disaster, war, conflict, any situation like this, put women in a vulnerable situation because we have a lack of sleep, constant one. We have to care about children more if we have children or elderly. We are pushed out of some earning money situations. We are still being the carers for our families. And for those women whose men are serving in the army, because we still have more men in the army, they are single providers for all their families. So the pressure is high, the stress is high, and the vulnerability is also pushing us sometimes to the situations where we cannot say no. And I would want to start with conflict-related sexual violence. As you may know, that in Ukraine there is a very strong patriotic, or somebody would say national feeling from all the population. We are strongly uniting as Ukrainians to fight our enemy. And this makes women's rights become secondary to this feeling of being Ukrainian. And sometimes it means for women to believe that first you have to care about something else and then you should care about your own rights. How it happens with conflict-related sexual violence. Our legislation, which was recently developed, does not name a conflict-related sexual violence as something that can be done by anybody. It is named as it can be done only by Russians. So you can understand that those people, those women and girls mostly, who could have been and are and were survivors from this kind of violence, will not be most likely able to protect their rights under this legislation because the violator was not a Russian person. I call it exclusive definition. And I think that this is highly damaging for Ukrainian women and girls and for general understanding of what conflict-related sexual violence is and who can be protected from it. This is also a very interesting moment that since we have a lot of support from Western countries and we really value this support, it's also related to humanitarian support, to support of survivors of violence. We have reparations for survivors from sexual CRSV already going on. And the interesting point in this one is that the person who confirms to be a survivor can either file a claim to the prosecutor's office or to the program which provides reparation. So we can compare two very interesting numbers. First, almost 200 women and about 100 men officially claim to be survivors from this kind of violence. But when we go to the reparations system, we see much more men going to receive reparations than those are going to official statement for prosecution office. This makes us question why in this situation women, almost the same amount of women go to the both stances, to the reparation and to the prosecutor's office. So we don't know the reason why it happens like this. We know that there are more men in prisons, tortured by Russians with sexualized tortures. But still, the question remains why there are the same amount of women go for reparations and for prosecution's office, and still, like three times more men go for reparations than they go for prosecution's office. This is a question to be maybe discussed or analyzed later, but still, it's quite an interesting point to pay attention. And another very important issue which I faced recently, because I'm a part of a lot of local discussions and working groups with the government agencies, with NGOs, there are claims that Ukrainian situation of conflict-related sexual violence is not gender-based violence. Scientists who are working with this topic, lawyers, many of them are against this. But still, we have all to be aware that there are people, sometimes influential people, who will say that this is not gender-based violence. I strongly do not agree with this claim. I still believe that even having this strong national element of conflict-related sexual violence, it is still gender-based violence. However, we have other claims, and we have to make sure that we are aware of the situation. Here, I'm happy to inform that it's almost half a year, even a little bit more, since we finally have the legal article saying that there is a punishment for sexual harassment in Ukraine. We have this definition for more than 20 years, and maybe for somebody it's also be interesting experience and interesting to compare that even having an article in the law about what is sexual harassment without the article in criminal code or administrative code as we have it, there will be no punishment. For 20 years, we have never had a single positive case of a woman being protected from sexual harassment. In Ukraine now, it's not only in work environment, it's also everywhere. The new definition is much more broader. And we already started receiving the complaints. We don't have the statistics yet, but I would really be happy to share that we are, as a country which doesn't really have a good implementation of policies, we are in a good way. We are really having a change because women understand that now they can complain. Now the police should be on their side. And we really have, I think that more than several hundreds protocols related to this situation. And there are quite a big amount of the fines as for Ukrainian people. And even what's interesting, there is a possibility to have minus 20% of person's salary, month salary, for this violation, which I found very important for people with high salaries who always think that small fines are not the ones that will scare them out. It's pornography. It's the one that shows us how war can impact impact women's rights in relation to cases like pornography. For example, maybe you've heard that there was and there is a movement, I would say, that tells that soldiers would feel better if they will be receiving some explicit, I would say, images from Ukrainian women. So women, please do send soldiers those images. So this was like, it was put like something good to do. And it was really terrible, especially when there is a criminal code which says that sharing somebody's explicit images can lead to criminal violation. So women can risk their freedom even when doing such things. So and this was used by some political party to say that we should protect women's rights and make it legal. So instead of protecting women for somebody else's usage of their images and selling somebody else's images. Political party for several years hold a very strong campaign, including criminal cases showing how poor mother had to pay a lot of money for investigation and proving that she was not sharing explicit materials. And all this was done to show that we need to protect women. We need to make all pornography legal. So now it's still going on. And I don't really see strong opposition from women groups because every woman in Ukraine may think, well, if I send this explicit picture to my partner through any social media and somehow it becomes public, will I be criminally liable? So this fear of being liable in situation like this, because the definition is quite unclear of whether you can share yours own pictures to your partner or it's somebody else's pictures. So instead of making like personal freedom to share their own images, they are pushing the law to make the whole sphere, the whole business legal. I was participating in several public debates on this issue with political leaders. It was terrible because manipulation which is going on when they say that this is for women's rights protection, it's impossible to hear without emotional response. But I have to calm down and present data because we all know that there's a big difference between selling somebody else's photos of this nature and sending our own pictures to people that we have relations with. And why I mention religious groups here, because when I was trying to oppose the law, the draft law, which was put by the same party, I put an effort to reach in different women's organizations who could help me to stop this law from being heard in the parliament. And there was not really big support. And then by chance, I got a person which I knew who was related to religious groups. So I connected to the person and asked if he can ask his group, because they are quite powerful in Ukraine, to stop this draft law from being publicly supported. And this worked. I should have said, well, this is not something that I would be happy about, but I have to admit that religious groups still have a quite a strong impact on what's going on in Ukraine. They have an influence in parliament, and in some cases, they can help to stop things like making pornography absolutely legal. So next slide is the last one, and it's about the most interesting issue for us as a feminist in Ukraine, as I'm a leader of one of the leaders of the feminist group Resistanta, which will get a very interested experience next month. We will be talking about trans ideology whole August, and we already have several TikTok videos about gender, why you should not use gender, what's wrong with this treatment, about what's wrong with men and women's sport, etc. It's not so much popular in Ukraine to have this information. We do not have this silencing, strong silencing as maybe you have in your countries. But still, the backlash can be really strong within our communities. I've heard that there is a situation when in some of the very famous universities, there is a teacher who is telling students that gender is something inherited, something you are born with, and sex is something we don't know whether you are born with or not. And when I was trying to ask the university what they think about the situation, of course I wrote an official letter asking, "Are you okay with your teachers saying things like that?" And this wasn't really effective because they are bureaucratic enough to ask me, "Do you know the name of the teacher? Please tell us when was this said?" And other details I couldn't know because I was just the person who read the information. But still, it's this is to say that we do have some information spread about the gender is inheritance. Somebody can be born in somebody else's body, and it's this information is given to the young people. And as a in our group in Resistanta, I can usually read situations, like read emotional response to our videos, saying that why can you just protect women's rights and do not touch other groups? Why do you offend trans people in your materials? But the materials is only about like being uh, true to women's rights. It's not about offending any group. So we are being blamed every time when we just talk about women's rights, and we are being blamed by young women. So I don't can say that we have anti-gender movement in the meaning that you may think. Our Ukrainian anti-gender movement is actually some traditional or religious, highly religious group, which are like hating everything related to feminism, to sexual, to transgender, and anything like sexual orientation. Oh, they're seeing all these topics like the same topic, and they are opposing all of this together. And sometimes they do not understand that people inside this group that they're making have different opinions. As for the last thing, I would say that there are not a lot of experts who publicly speak in anti-transgender way in Ukraine. Mostly people are either silent or they are being like really careful, because still a lot of us have positions which do not allow us to say everything we can and we want to say. But we are trying our best. We are using this information from our Western feminists, sisters. We are translating, and we are planning to do more to make our people know that this is not the way we want to go. Thank you.
Are there specific quote unquote LGBTQ groups pushing gender identity on society in Ukraine? And a related question is, if you know, what's the role of USAID in Ukraine?
Yeah, there are groups which are definitely speaking on anything like queer ideology, trans ideology, and it's interesting. I wasn't really researching a lot of how it's appeared and why and from whom, but what I see it's comes from modern sociologist programs in those universities that I've heard. So it's came from people who had education in Western countries. So it's like more piece by piece, bringing here Ukraine feminist ideas was together with bringing gender ideology. It was something similar. It was something as if it's the same. But I didn't see any movement, really strong movement as an organization. I would say that I've seen personalities who are strongly pushing the topic in social media. They are spreading as being themselves from the category we are talking about. They are speaking like it's about us, so everything I say is true. You understand? But when I'm not a part of the group, anything I would say, even if it's numbers from scientific research, if a data, statistical data, or any data-based material, I'm not a part of the group, so I cannot know. And the person who is inside of the group, who is representing, whenever she or he says, or they, it's something that should be considered a truth, because they are the part of the group which is about which are talking about. So we do face a lot of strongly positioned individuals who are quite aggressive online, who are sharing unproved, I would say, like very unsure research. Every time I check the research they mention, it comes to be untrue or not representative, etc. But still, they have a quite a good amount of people who listen to them, and it's quite hard to oppose like not being a part of the group. And as for identity, we do have a simplified procedure since almost 5 years, I think. Before they had to go quite complicated psychological testing, uh, a lot of procedures, but now it's simplified. However, I'm not really to say that is it much easier now. I just hear from those people that it did become easier.
Are there clinics that are treating kids who are confused about their sex?
No, I've never heard anything like this. However, in Ukraine, it's much easier because of corruption issues to get any medication. So it's not really a problem. Just like this, you go and get anything, almost anything you want, if it's in the country. If the medicine is in the country, there is a possibility to get it without any doctor prescription. But I don't still see a lot of young people being under this treatment. I don't call it treatment, I call it invasion. But still, I've been witnessing several young women with situation like this. It's quite emotional to talk about it. I've seen what's been happening to them, and because we don't have any specialist who can talk to them, who can explain to them in Ukrainian that this is not the way to go. It's can be happening more and more numbers in the following years because there's nothing stopping them. If they get visual, if they get materials, if they can hear. A lot of Ukrainians know English, so they can just from school. So it's easy for them with YouTube captions. They can easily get involved into this from the very young age.